So a little bit about me and the company I work for. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Utomik. It was founded in 2014, and I would say we're the true pioneers in the Netflix for gaming model with an unlimited play. Before us came On Live, but it wasn't really a Netflix for games. It was more of a, you can play your games that you already bought. So it wasn't really an all-you-can-eat subscription. Then a little bit about myself. I'm an entrepreneur. Have been since 2006. I have a physics background, so it's funny that I'm in this conference. I have experience in game development, platform development, strategy, and management. That's basically my role over the years. And I've been an early follower and skeptic, and I would also say enthusiastic person for cloud gaming, like from almost the very beginning. So I've been tracking it, making business model on it, checking the technology. And overall, I would call myself a bit of an innovator. So that's me. So a little bit about Utomik. We'll make this very brief. Our service is 1,000 plus games in one subscription. The technology, this is where it gets interesting in the discussion further on this talk, is smart download tech for instant play with native computes. This means that the game still runs on your system. You download only a small part, you get to start playing, and everything else is downloaded while you play. And we are unique in our system that everything is done automatically, and it predicts what you will need before you need it. So it will make sure that the user experience is seamless while I can still start playing after sometimes only downloading 1/20th of the game, and then I can get going. But the game still runs on your own computer. Now there's a new thing, it's actually a pretty old thing, but more on that later. Cloud gaming. Before I move on, I wanted to make one picture of what cloud gaming is and what the latency stack is. Latency stack is nothing more than the delay I get between doing something and getting a response. Because with cloud gaming, as you can see on top, there's an input device. In this case, I gave an example of a controller. Then you have a device. I would say maybe I would call it a rendering device, a computer, a TV, an Android, a mobile phone. Then you have your local network. Then you have your ISP and server network, where you have all the hosting services like that were mentioned in the previous presentation. And then you have the actual server. So the way it works is you press forward, and then this signal goes all the way through all those parts, and then the game is run on the server, so not natively on your system. And that server also encodes the frames and the sound and sends it back up the chain, back to the user, where he can hear and see the game. So this is a bit of a simplistic view of it, but I think it's very important because to be very frank, everyone who has been talking about cloud gaming in the last couple of years has basically focused on the ISP part and on the server part, and basically ignored the local part, the device part, and the input part. While I've seen many talks over the years, ever since the beginning, where an engineer was kind of frustrated that they kind of solved most of the big issues already at the end, but the biggest issue of latency was at the top of the chain, which is hard to control. But more on that later. So this is a bit to give you a scope and context of what cloud gaming is, and how, as the previous speaker said, how complicated this latency stack is, because within every module here, there's multiple things going on, but that's way too short for this presentation. So what I find important to, before you talk about the future, is to know your past and know it well and give some context to where we are today. So as I followed it, I did a little bit more research. I want to go into two chapters. The first chapter is the early pioneers. It's basically the first decade of this millennium. And the struggle is real. I'm an innovator myself, a lot of people. So I have the utmost respect for all the companies here, and I know that I skipped some companies, but I really want to make sure that it's on time and we have a high level view. If anybody wants to know more companies, there's plenty more, but these are the key figures in history, as you will see also when I continue. So 1998 has been, I would call, almost the inception of cloud gaming, because remote desktop was introduced. And the first cloud game that was ever played is likely perchance by a server operator or some techie that decided to do a game of perchance on a different desktop. Then in 2003 already, OnLive was founded. Some of their patents are even older. One company that a lot of people have heard of OnLive. Another company that not many people know of is an Israeli company called Playcast. More on that later. They were founded in 2007. In 2008, they started to do their first launches with some ISPs. Then in 2009, can I remove this? No, you can't. Gaikai was founded and OnLive was announced for the first time. And 2010, as if somebody helped me make this presentation, OnLive was launched. And that was basically the end of the first chapter of cloud gaming. There were many more in this beginning. So then we go on to the next chapter, which is market readiness and the big movers. So in 2012, Gaikai got sold even before properly launching any real product. They did some tests with advertisements where you could play a demo, but they got sold to Sony for a lot of money. More on that later. In 2013, Agawi is launched. You will say, Agawi who? You will know why this is very important for the future. Then in 2014, 2 years after Sony bought Gaikai, they finally introduced the PlayStation Now. That was the first introduction of cloud gaming on a platform level by one of the big players. And then in 2015, interesting things happen. Sony acquires OnLive. Well, not OnLive, the assets of OnLive. Actually, the lawyer that we use was involved with that, so I know quite a bit more. And the other part is Google acquires Agawi. So this also always shows you that in technology, also follow the money, because as some of you know, in the future or in the current stage, Google is active in the cloud gaming market. Then in 2018, EA acquires Playcast from Gamefly. So in between this, Playcast also got bought, or the assets, by a company called Gamefly, which is a game rental company. And then it's almost perfectly fitting. In 2019, Google Stadia finally launched. It was not a success for a multitude of reasons. So this is a bit of a background of cloud gaming. What I want to move in now is like, why did all these, as you saw here, you see all these gravestones. There's actually way more gravestones than I'm showing you, but I want to go into the details of why did they fail. And it's never a silver bullet to succeed, but it's also never a silver bullet to fail. I've been following this, going to conferences and just evaluating whether I would move into cloud gaming. I put it into 3 different verticals that need to be good. It's the technology and platform, the ecosystem readiness, and the business model. So initially, none of the technology and platforms were truly user-centric. Nobody was asking the question, what does a user want? They just were selling the idea of, now you can play a game anywhere, and now you can stream it from your TV or whatever. And nobody was talking about, well, whether the user experience is good, or is a TV good to do a point and click adventure? No, it's not. So all those questions were not asked. And also the focus on the technology was entirely on their own stack. They were very focused on the server and on the latency within the server, but they forgot about all the ecosystem parts that needed to be there. And I'll move on to that now. So the ecosystem readiness. So the biggest, I always laughed about it, is the biggest hurdle was devices. So everybody was like, now I can play on every device. But what nobody really had a grasp on is that all these set-top boxes that were supposed to do cloud gaming, or all those thin clients, they were all developed, and every penny was saved to really make it affordable and not cost anything. This means that the encoding or decoding of a video stream at 60 frames per second was a no-go area. The latency introduced, and this is no joke, we did internal tests on some set-top boxes, that is 1,000 milliseconds plus. So it's mind-boggling. So the devices were not there. The network had the capacity, but the capacity of the network was not there. At one point, a big telco asked the question, who's gonna, invest and make this possible? Because if you do cloud gaming, you have a centralized pipe that you need of hundreds of thousands unique video streams, because every game is unique, versus if I watch a video from Netflix, or I watch a video or a stream, even a live stream, I can propagate and duplicate all the data, which you cannot do in cloud gaming. So the network was not there. And then there's consumer confusion. Consumers were not really aware of the need that was there. And so consumers were presented a promise that was never truly delivered. And that goes on to the business model. The costs of cloud gaming were way, way too high. So it was renting a server that would run a game, and doing it at scale was almost 100 times more expensive than providing it as a download. And then the proposition for consumers was very unclear. When OnLive launched, they said, now you can, they presented it as a Netflix for games, but then people had to pay $10 a month. And then all of a sudden, after you register, well, you still have to buy the game, and then you have to still buy the game. But I was presented a Netflix for games. So now I have to buy a game, and I can play the game on my computer where I could already play it. So there was no real clarity of cloud gaming and what it stood for and who it was for. So that's on a high level why I feel a lot of them failed. There's probably even more reasons, but I think these are the highlights. So where are we today? And I think this is where I'm getting really happy. A breakthrough is happening, or has already happened. The technology and platforms are now aware of the full stack. What do I mean by this is, for example, Google Stadia was launched with its own controller, which does not connect to the rendering device, but it connects directly to the server. So that means that Google is aware of the impact of the input device that you use to play the game when you do cloud gaming. So they can skip one part of the latency stack. So that shows you that everybody that's working on these platforms is really aware of the complete picture. Samsung or LG are now also more aware of this, and are creating TVs that also don't introduce a bucket load of latency, because some older full HD TVs, just their rendering creates more latency than any network engineer can ever compensate for.
Doki, could you look at the time, because we are running late, to be honest.
Yeah, okay. So the ecosystem readiness, the devices are there, the network is ready. Everybody's talking about 5G. It's in some regions ready, in some regions by far not. The business model is more clear and it's now affordable. And now we're going to my last slide. The way I look at it is hybrid is the way forward. For me, hybrid for cloud gaming is not the mix between public and native cloud, which you also need for cloud, but it's the mix between native play, so play on your own system, and cloud. Because a lot of people will still play on a system that has the compute power, but a lot of people can also play when that's not available. It has to do with the type of games, and as things evolve, more and more games will move into the cloud. I think the other more cultural part is that cloud gaming will make gaming omnipresent in our lives, like music and video. So the metaverse, on which everybody's working, will boom. And I think gaming valued as culture will increase because of cloud gaming. And I also think it will generate new experiences. Multiplayer will be vastly different because with cloud gaming, the latency problems from the previous talk are actually almost over, because you can put all that piece in the server center, and scaling to massive thousands and thousands of players in one world actually becomes a lot easier to do. We're not there yet, but I expect the first true cloud-only game to be an insane multiplayer experience. And I also believe that there will be a blurred line between watching and playing games, because with cloud gaming, you already have a video stream, and joining a game, watching a game will be, a very fascinating thing to see what happens in esports. And then, of course, Utomik is going to join this game. So that's it for me.